the greatest part of servant leadership is listening, hearing what our folks are telling them, and then go out and get that done so that they can become more effective.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the podcast that cuts through the noise to focus on leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. Together, we'll discover the strategies and hard-earned lessons from pragmatic, gutsy leaders who operate in a world that is more steak than it is sizzle. Right here, we dive into their stories, challenges, and triumphs to go beneath the surface to the very heart of leadership in the real economy. I'm your host, Jim Weaver, Chief Operating Officer of the Onan Group, where we believe that real leadership does indeed matter. Let's go.
Understanding your labor market is crucial for successful recruitment. Onan Staffing's Recruitment Strategy Guide provides insights specific to your geographic location and the positions you're hiring for. Our Recruitment Strategy Guide delivers a clear snapshot of your labor market and actionable intel to tackle market-specific challenges. With Onan's expertise, we help you navigate and win in your competitive landscape. Empower your recruiting process with the insights you need. Learn more about Onan's Recruitment Strategy Guide at onanstaffing.com/strategy. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Mike Bartikowski. As a Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute alum with a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering and an MBA from Villanova, Mike is a seasoned leader in the food industry. Talk about leadership in the real economy. Over the course of Mike's career, he's worked with a bunch of heavy hitters, including Nestle, PepsiCo, and Quaker Oats. His career has had international implications as well, from his time in Warsaw, Poland with Coca Cola as the Director of National Business Development to becoming VP of International Operations at the Hershey's Company. Mike has had a really interesting range of industry and leadership experience. He has shared his expertise in countless expos over the years and runs Summit 5S Consulting, a food processing advisory group. Today, Mike is the Chief Operating Officer of Craftmark Bakery. Craftmark Bakery is a relatively fresh face in the baked goods market, but they are turning heads with their state-of-the-art facility in Indianapolis, Indiana. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wow. You know, looking at your background, that's quite a list of big-time organizations. What an interesting career. It seems like you've developed a niche as a fixer. Is that an apt way to frame it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think about the litany of folks that I've worked for and consider myself to be virtually unemployable. But it's been a great range of experience. But I think, I've focused in on consumer goods and food and beverage. And the opportunity to go in and really help turn things around. Even for those larger players, a lot of it was engaging in, kind of redefining supply chain, or, as you mentioned in the introduction, some of the international operations, and really trying to bring those kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Yeah, I was reading about your time with Hershey. It seems like that's where you really kind of planted your flag in the fixer guy category. You came in and you were charged with restructuring offshore operations and then restoring Brazil and Mexico to profitability. That sounds like a massive undertaking. What'd you walk into there? How do you tackle a project like that? And were you able to turn it around?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was pretty cool. A lot of great leadership with the company at the time. J.P. Bilbrey, who went on to be director in several different businesses, chairman of the board of a couple. Huh. And those folks really had a vision for what they wanted things to be. And what we found is that Hershey International in those early days was what I used to phrase as the site of benign neglect. It wasn't that things were really that bad. It just wasn't high on anybody's priority list.
Yeah.
Hershey was, really busy growing domestically, really focused on its domestic market. Its international businesses had been small, and to a pretty large degree irrelevant. And they said they didn't want that to be the case anymore. So I got a lot of tools, a lot of support to go in and make that different.
How do you go about triaging something like that and figuring out what you need to tackle first and what you have to put in place?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm a bit old-fashioned, so there's this thing called the ABC analysis. I'm sure we've all heard of it. 20% of whatever we do typically brings 60% or more of its value. The next 20%, brings the next 20% of value. So in 40% of your business, you've got 80% of your value or more.
Yeah.
And what we found in all of those businesses is that it was true and in fact more concentrated. So we found that 15 or 20% of the business in each place that mattered. We focused on it. We made sure that we were thinking about it properly from a cost perspective. A couple of interesting examples in that vein. And once we had those things kind of aligned, we could really get people focused on what it would take to grow the business, make it more profitable, and really then be able to reinvest to grow in different areas.
Yeah. Is that still the approach today?
Yeah. I'm a guy with a very small bag of tools. So it's pretty much the same thing, rinse and repeat. We go after it in that same way. It's figuring out what's core, and then going out and trying to make it happen. In a lot of cases in manufacturing, we find ourselves in these, older facilities. One of the things that we face is a lot of what I refer to as deferred maintenance. People have just put off investing in their core assets or put off on maintenance, and they suffer the consequences of that. Deteriorating efficiencies, things just don't run as well as they would hope they run, and they're a bit reluctant to invest. But you figure out when you do invest, when you fix those things, the assets open up, and there's a lot more opportunity to make the business healthy.
What does it take to win those owners over to making those investments typically? Because that has been in front of them many times and they haven't made the change. So what does it take?
A little bit of trust me. A lot of it is putting them in contact with people that have had success doing it. Getting to talk to somebody to believe a little bit more, and then saying, okay, this guy maybe isn't full of himself or stuff. We'll give him a shot to come in and help make things happen. I think a lot of people know it in their hearts too. They understand what's core to the business and what needs to happen to make things better, and you're able to go from there.
I think it's important in senior leadership to have people in your life, whether it's a coach or a peer group or somebody like you that comes in and can come at you at your level and call out your, we all have lines, stories we're telling ourselves that are BS. Let's face it, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny. We were talking a little bit before we got started, and we talked about the interim executive role, and that's really the pivotal role of an interim executive is to come in and be able to speak without reservation with the owner or ownership group and call it as you see it, so to speak, and then be able to go out and be an instrument for change for their benefit and for their team. So that's, it's really important when you think about, the qualities of building a team. You look around and you think about people who in the news maybe are building great teams and those that are building questionable teams. And it's always easy to have faith in those teams that you feel are a little bit better, a little bit more solid, there are people in the room that are acting like adults. Not everybody there is acting like a child. It makes a difference.
Recruiting top talent is tough. Onan Staffing focuses on people, offering exceptional benefits to attract and retain dedicated workers. Partner with us for flexible, data-driven solutions. Visit onanstaffing.com to learn more.
We were talking about we were talking about Coach Prime coming up to this, and interesting to see that this is a little bit of a right turn, but you and I were talking about it. Yeah. Interesting to see the changes in Colorado and that football program, and the good things that are happening and some of the great things. But he made a cultural comment we were talking about that you seem to take a little issue with. Why don't you go down that rabbit trail a little bit?
Sure. And I was intrigued by it because he said he didn't really give much thought to culture.
Yeah.
And I found it to be ironic. I really objected to it because I believe culture is paramount to building successful ventures at every level. And I think it's particularly important when you're talking about a bunch of young men and trying to form how they think about the world and things going on. And with all the conflicting influences, I guess, that exist in big-time college sports now, these guys have so much temptation in front of them that if it isn't really cultural based, then or based in culture, it's going to be difficult to do well. And so he says he doesn't care about culture, but everything he does smacks of culture. It's always a little bit tough to take Coach Prime, for some of the brash and outspoken things that he comes out with. But when you slow down and listen to where he's at, he's a faith-based guy.
Yeah.
He really is about culture. Everything he does is about culture and about his love for his players, for his team, for those around him. And I think that's a really powerful thing, really interesting to watch.
I think that statement, I think I understood what he was saying. I think the statement taken out of context can be a little, it could be a little dangerous, You don't want to win at all costs culture. I think sometimes a focus on culture, people can think that means we're making everybody comfortable. And it seems to me that's kind of what he was railing against. Like, no, we're here. We got a mission. That's what we're focused on. I know it was a few years back, we really wanted to focus on culture, and somehow we sent the message that it was about comfort. And we had to make a really conscious decision. Like, no, this is a winning culture. Like, this isn't about everybody being comfortable. I think that's, people kind of think about culture and they're like ping pong in the break room and, happy hours at the end of the day. Maybe that's where he was coming from. I couldn't make sense of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think, that there's a bit of a dichotomy, when people talk about culture, and if it's too nurturing, if it's too, if it's less focused on what it takes to win in business or in life. But I mean, I think that, I talk a lot about servant leadership. He acts a lot from a position of servant leadership. And those words just weren't consistent, and it was really hard for me to deal with because there was so much press being given to it. I played a little bit of college football, and we weren't that successful as a team. In my early days, we got a little bit more successful. The team's doing better these days, but it really is, to me, so important that the players feel supported, that they also have a sense of obligation to somebody for what's right and what's wrong. And with all the, pay for, personal rights and the kind of things that are in front of college athletes today, that measure of accountability has gone wanting. And I really like the fact that he underneath these statements is trying to hold people accountable. I hope it goes beyond what we see, and I hope that the guys at Colorado stay above the fray and don't fall victim, as a lot of college athletes have to, the excesses that can be part of their success.
Yeah, it's tough to handle that at that age. You need some guide rails.
Yeah. Think of myself at that age and kind of go, put a couple $1 million in front of me, I would have been a mess.
Yeah, no kidding.
I probably still would be today, but that's a different story.
So when you go into a new operation, or you're coming in as in an interim executive role, what are you looking for? What are your goals in terms of culture, and how do you go about bringing that to fruition?
Yeah, I think, in manufacturing, we have a bit of a history of being organizations that are inclined towards command and control. And you look generationally that a lot of leaders in manufacturing talk about, what to do and giving clear direction to people. And I think it's finding the balance of providing direction in terms of the bigger goals, the 2 or 3 things that are key for the organization to achieve, and then to giving people the boundaries and letting them go, asking them to participate. Participative collaboration from the shop floor isn't something that people, in a lot of places have done well. We hear a lot about lean manufacturing, and at its core, Toyota, in developing that, they stole it from, Deming and the guys here in the States, and made it much better and really lived by it. But that was all about taking the voice of the folks on the floor and what they were doing and using that to make things better. And you really can't beat that in terms of finding solutions and getting better quickly. So that's what we look for is you go in as a team, want to build a team of folks. We came into Craftmark and had a situation where, with the pandemic, we had 70% temps and we had 200+ % turnover. And,
wow.
and really the challenge was to get in there and find leaders that could both be shoulder to shoulder with their, teammates on the line, and then could separate themselves, become supervisors, become managers, and grow with the business. So that was our focus, and we realized, like a lot of manufacturing companies do, that a lot of their first line supervision is promoted from within.
Yeah.
One of the underdeveloped areas that people end up suffering with is that ability to lead people on the frontline basis. And so we worked hard on that, found folks, who had that inclination, helped them develop that, and then tried to redefine their roles for them into things that allowed them to be supervisors, allowed them to be managers. Because some of the expectation in crisis is that they rolled up their sleeves and they jumped in there.
Yeah.
And then we didn't have anybody managing.
Yes.
Right. Everybody was working their tails off, and nobody knew, what was good at the end of the day or what needed to be done. So we helped them get their heads up and move on and focus on winning.
Yeah. I've read in interviews, and you touched on it earlier, but you are you talk a lot about servant leadership. So what does that mean to you, and why is that something you're passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a great concept for leadership, and we can all relate to people in our lives who have been that transformational leader, teacher, coach, mentor for us. And they never came across as the person who was telling you exactly what to do, who was, they may have been giving you warnings, they may have been helping you try to see the error in your ways, but they were really much more about helping you understand the choices that you could make, helping you solve the problems that were in front of you. And that's what I see as servant leadership. Our folks on the floor, they know what they need to do every day.
Yeah.
But what they don't have is access to go and solve the problems. They can't write a purchase order to buy new stuff. They need somebody to do that for them. Whether it's, a new piece of equipment or it's repairs to a piece of equipment. they oftentimes feel constrained that nobody listens to them. So therefore, nothing gets fixed. And we try to really make an effort that the greatest part of servant leadership is listening, hearing what our folks are telling them, and then go out and get that done so that they can become more effective.
The greatest part of servant leadership is listening. I think that's wrong. It seems like that's scarce, especially in the industries that we work with and that you've been in. Why do you think that is?
You know, I think a lot of it comes from the perception of what leaders are supposed to do. We're supposed to know what the problems are. So sometimes it's difficult to take input. And you feel maybe as a leader that you're not really on top of your game if you're reliant on the people on the floor to tell you what you need to do. So it's finding that balance. I mean, because as leaders, we need to know the top 2 or 3 things. Mm-hmm. We need to know what's really important to success for the business, success for the enterprise, success for the product, and get people focused on that. And underneath that, there's myriads of other problems that we're not always the closest to solve. And figuring out how to listen and how to listen by level is a really important, I think, revelation, or maturation for leaders. Yeah. Listen by level. Explain that. So your floor folks are going to have certain things that they're going to tell you about that are frustrating for them. Mm-hmm. That's their day-to-day interaction with the product, with the equipment, with the management. And then, so those are a set of problems to solve. And then your frontline leadership, they're going to tell you their frustrations with the people. Their frustration with the systems that they're asked to work with, mm-hmm. What they see on a larger scale of equipment, beyond the hour by hour, to what happens on a weekly basis, what startups and shutdowns are like, and get that. And then you've got, your department managers who you're tasking to go out and find savings, find ways to become more efficient. They're looking at a different set of problems. So you've got to be able to tune in as a leader at each of those levels, and sort the wheat from the chaff and find those things that you can do reasonably, you can do quickly, and the momentum that you gain. I'll never forget early on in one of our turnarounds, one of the feedback pieces that we got was hey, that emergency exit sign has been broken for about 6 months. And we bring it up in every safety committee meeting, and it never gets fixed. And it's just a clear symbol that nobody's listening to what we have to say. Yeah. And, didn't take me long. I said, okay, I'm going to go grabbed an electrician and said, what would it take to fix that emergency exit light in that room? He said, I can get that done in about 5 minutes. I said, please go do that for me. And they went and did it. And that was the beginning of the change. Yeah. Right. It was as simple as that, but that drove a great deal of change, a great deal of differential focus from people to say, hey, we're going to fix things that we know are wrong. Mm-hmm. And we talk about safety being first, but then we can't fix an emergency exit sign. Yeah. It just doesn't seem quite right. Yeah. It's easy to kind of get sucked into the big picture, strategic, whatever, yeah. When, man, you can get some really easy wins that send a really good message. It's foolish to overlook those. That's a great example of that. Well, and the momentum that you build as people start to believe, it's those little things that first give them confidence that, okay, you are going to listen and you're going to try to make things better. We're going to succeed in many of those things, but we're still going to fail against some of the things that they ask us to do because yes, we listened, but we didn't listen well. Yeah. And we got it wrong when we tried to fix it. So going out there and really trying to fix things is pretty key.
Accomplishing diversity, equality, and inclusion directives can be challenging. Excelsior Staffing, a certified MBE providing staffing solutions for light industrial sectors, has been helping companies like yours find success since 2007. Strengthen your diverse team with Excelsior. ExcelsierStaffing.com.
You're currently the COO with Craftmark Bakery. That's your, and they're a fairly not as marquee as some of the names, but you've got a nice presence. It's an impressive operation. So for the folks listening, what do you bake, and who do you bake it for?
Sure. So we actually don't bake a ton. We're less of a bakery and more of a refrigeration company, I guess.
That's the name.
When it comes down to it. We've got 2 ovens in the building. So we do bake a finished cookie, and we bake some flatbreads. And most of what we do, though, is we're making, pre-formed frozen products. We make what we term a breadstick, which gets baked into a sandwich loaf for a green and yellow company that's advertising a lot recently.
Okay.
We also bake their cookies. We bake, for most quick service restaurants out there, we're in some form or another, from breakfast right through dinner.
So people have eaten your product. Most people have eaten your product.
Yeah, pretty certain. We've got good national distribution. We're with a lot of major retailers.
Yeah.
Our retail presence, right now we're on the verge of launching with a national retailer. Our other retail business we've had a national retailer in the Better For You grocery space now for a little bit, coming up in a couple of years. So yeah, we're proud of what we make. We make it under their label for the most part. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to see Craftmark out there on the retail shelf, but we're doing a couple $100 million of business supporting your local quick service restaurant.
Yeah. Why do your customers work with you as opposed to your competitors?
Well, it's a tough space. It really is. It's highly competitive. It's very, very price motivated. We entered into a deal to bring new capacity and new technology into a space that had been aging and pretty antiquated. That brought with it some economies of scale. Mm-hmm. Our lines are big and fast, and that's an area of opportunity for folks that are doing high volume to take advantage of and to enter in with somebody who's invested in that technology and really partnering with them to grow it. So they're coming to us for that. We also have a lights out innovation team that a lot of these folks have developed or worked with a partner to develop a range of products that they no longer have ownership of. They don't own the formula. They don't, have all of the rights of development that they'd like to have. And we partner with them to give back, a fair share of those rights and help them have insight to their formula and then evolve that formula. We've all heard about, the no list. You want to have a product that doesn't have any sugar in it, doesn't have any fat in it, doesn't have any artificial ingredients. Those things are hard to come by,
right?
Particularly if you're talking cookies and bread.
Yes.
So we try to help them find a path forward in that regard.
Okay. Is the efficiency that you guys have been able to develop in terms of your lines, is that how you were able to bring down the labor spend while production went up? I would assume that had something to do with it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, we had to get on top of running the lines the way that they were intended to be run. A little bit of that was deferred maintenance and getting equipment back at rate.
Yeah.
And then it was, working to, in the midst of the pandemic and the supply chain things that happened, we found ourselves in that declining spiral of service. You weren't able to service. You had to cancel or shorten a run because materials weren't coming. We were throwing labor at it, trying to build our capability, and it just kind of spiraled downwards into not having the product that people wanted at the time they wanted it, et cetera. And timing such as it is, now we've had 18 months of success of being able to have a more reliable supply chain, and we didn't do that. I mean, we're thankful for the circumstances changing. But what we did do was we made our equipment more reliable, and then we were able to run better and start to take advantage of that and really turn the business around from what was literally a revolving door into something that's more sustainable, and that gives people a reason to come back. So now we're finding people, building their tenure with us. We were a bit bipolar in that regard. We had some people that have been with us the full 7 or 8 years that we've existed as a company. Yeah. And we struggled to have people come back the second day. We're now at a point where our average tenure is really starting to increase, and we're taking advantage of that.
So why do people stick around with you if they're going to stick around?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the one thing that people really have to do is, number one, they love what they do. We work in manufacturing, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to relate to that. Because they view it as being very repetitive. But I think at a level for a lot of people, myself included, it's very rewarding in that you're able to see what you made each day. I talk about walking in and seeing an empty warehouse in the morning, and by evening leaving knowing that we're going to have that warehouse full of great products.
Yeah.
And then second is their path as individuals. I mean, people are looking for fulfillment, and this doesn't matter whether you're a janitor, be the best janitor you can be, or you're working on a production line, with us at Craftmark. They're fulfilled on a level beyond just being paid for their work, whether that's helping to train new employees, or learning a skill, or feeling like they were part of a solution because we asked them what they thought, they told us, and we did. We took their advice. So that fulfillment is really, really key. And the next piece is people still value stability. I think the days are gone when we're going to have single employer careers.
Yeah.
But we find every day a core of people who are committed to growing with us as we grow with them, and that's really increasing value to our team members and increasing value to us.
Yeah. You, on the previous point, you mentioned supply chain issues. I'm curious how a guy like you thinks about the supply chain. We sort of realized that, wow, it's really cost effective, but boy, is it fragile, the way we do things. Yeah. So how are you thinking about that long term? How do you think that we need to mix things or change things up with our supply chain here in the U.S. to not get so easily derailed? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that we're relearning lessons of the past, and history is a great teacher, and we ought to learn from it, or we're doomed to repeat it. The lesson here is remain close to your core. So if your core market is here in the U.S., you're sourcing, and a majority of your value ought to be created pretty close to where that is. For us in the food business, that's always been pretty easy for most people who export branded food products. Those exports are pretty small and kind of the entry into those markets, and then you end up building factories there. That's a lot of what we did with Hershey when we were opening up international markets. Is we opened the door with imports, we built the market, and then we went in and made it locally.
So your supply chain was local with international, with Hershey, that you develop a local supply chain there as well.
Yeah, and there were certain boundaries we put up for product safety, et cetera. Yeah. We were entering China in a period of time when they were having, some dairy issues, some crises with melamine in their dairy products, and we had a hard and fast rule that we weren't going to buy local dairy until we had a good idea that it was going to be safe, and thank God for that. Didn't make us particularly popular with the Chinese government, but in the long term, it was the right thing to do. And I think we're seeing that lesson a little bit today, people talk about reshoring as kind of the new buzzword that's out there. I think it's a bit overdue. I also see, this whole idea of our carbon footprint is being a big driver for what's going to cause some companies to really wake up and say, I can't be sourcing inexpensive widgets from far away lands and expect that to be the right way to drive, my growth for the long term.
Yeah.
So I've got to find a balance. There are going to be economic centers for certain raw materials for sure.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be the case. I don't think anybody in the world will ever produce oil as cheaply as they produce oil in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to have to find alternative sources and figure out how to balance that supply chain.
Sure.
Yeah.
How else do you see your industry, the food production industry, evolving over coming years?
Yeah, we're in a very kind of tenuous spot, not unlike a lot of other industry has found themselves. A lot of our industry has aged. A lot of the companies that are hallmarks of our industry have been around for a long time. The margins have gotten increasingly small and competitive, and that's been a barrier to reinvestment. Yeah. And I think what we're starting to see now is that there's new technology out there that changes the value proposition for investment. So we're going to see, I think we'll see some consolidation in the industry. We'll see, good suppliers be rewarded for quality, be rewarded for good relationships, and that'll be part of the consolidation model. But the other part will be, those folks willing to invest to renew technology and to find, a different path forward, whether it's lower cost or higher efficiency. Those are things that we need to do.
Yeah. You've been around for a while. What's something you've changed your mind on recently?
Well, interesting point. And, in Indiana, they say, yeah, it's been a minute. They always say, yeah, it's been a minute that I've been in the business. Well, in that minute, one of the things that really changed for me is labor. We've talked a lot about it in this segment. You guys are a key player in that labor market. And to really talk about how that's changed. As a younger manager, I always believed there would be enough labor out there to solve any problem, address any issue, that we'd always be, competitive from a labor perspective. People would want to come to work for a good wage. Yeah. And I'm not sure that that's the case anymore. There's, people are making different value judgments about what work they want to do. And we've got to figure that out. And it really is a war for talent. It's, particularly in some of the technical areas, I can't tell you, Indianapolis is a market. We've got more jobs in the area than there are people to fill the jobs. Yeah. So we see a high mobility amongst workers, and we see certain categories of workers being, extremely competitive. Maintenance technicians, technical people, instrument folks, electricians, skilled trades. They really can kind of write their own ticket these days.
Yeah. The low labor force participation rate is a real challenge. And then that skilled labor gap is another huge challenge. A few years ago, it's like the average skilled trades worker was 56 years old. I think that was about 10 years ago. Yeah, when I read that.
So they're retired.
Do the math. Oh my goodness. There is a lot of opportunity. You're absolutely right. Folks can write their own ticket. We're trying to promote that in high schools here in Alabama, and we've got to figure out how to get people off the sidelines or have sensible, immigration policy. Because there is a real shortage in every state, not just Indiana, but there's a gap there.
Yeah, in automation, what we're finding is that we've done some automation and we've done some, what I will call gamification of work. We've translated a lot of our shop floor management to being, graphical tools on a tablet. So people can see what they're doing. They know what it takes to win, not just for the day anymore, but hour by hour. And that's really driving a different type of engagement, and it's making it more relevant for people, new young folks whose idea of immediate return is really vastly different than it was 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So finding a way to turn on that switch for them has really been key. And hopefully, we ignite enough interest that they'll go out and figure out that they want to be a bigger part of that. We're seeing that it's still a pretty small, core of folks, maybe 5 or 10% that really get excited about it and come to us and say, I'd like to be a bigger part of this. Is there something you can do for me? And we're more than happy to try and find ways to build them as managers and to get them going.
Yeah. Well, we are almost up on time. I'll hit you with one more question before we let you get back to it.
Sure.
So what advice would you give yourself, your 30-year-old self? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I was 30.
What lessons have you learned?
Thankfully, my kids are going through this, and this is advice I give them: is remember to find and keep balance in your life. And I wish I'd been better at it. I wish I was better at it today. I still probably skew too much towards work and things outside of the other things that should be important in your life. So find that, and family, service, and home are things that come real big in that. I put service, whether it's faith-based or it's some other service to your community, that's rewarding and invaluable beyond words. And people need to, I think in your old age, you find out how much value you draw from that. And I see when there are young people engaged, how much energy they have to bring. And I think if people could find that sooner, that would be really, really great. The other one is being more conscious of physical fitness. I am really marvel at the level of fitness that our country, that our communities are embracing, and I think that's really good and important because it never gets easier as you get older.
Right.
To be fit or to try and regain fitness.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the last piece is really about trying to find something beautiful every day. Whether that's a sunset, a smile from your child. I've got a little 20-pound ball of fluff around here, and she's going blind and deaf. But when she wags her tail, that's pretty cool. And and just the simplicity of life through those eyes is pretty cool.
Yeah, the clock is ticking. You gotta take those moments for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good. Let's end it there. So where can folks find out more about Craftmark for those who are up in Indianapolis, or maybe can reach you or your consulting group? Where can they find you?
Well, please find us on craftmark.com. We're looking for people to come to work with us, to join us. And if you're in the Indy area and you're looking for an exciting way to engage your talents, then please check us out. If you've got a restaurant or a supermarket and you're looking for ways to bring new products into your bakery section or into the products that you're selling, then give us a call. We're online at craftmark.com. And, you can find me at summit5sconsulting.com. Kind of park that business while I'm doing other gigs, but, really anxious to talk to people all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We'll put that in the show notes. Mike, thank you so much.
Thanks, been great. Jim. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast was powered by Owning, a family of staffing companies providing real staffing solutions to manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies across the United States of America. To get in touch or learn more about partnering with an Owning Group company, visit us at www.ownanggroup.com. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.